Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Good, how are you? You can stop calling me Mr. Krueger.
Oh, sorry.
We know each other now. How's it going?
You're going good. I'm just gonna sync this right here.
Yeah. My name is Steve Krueger, and I was a consulting producer and writer on Lost Tapes Season 1.
Only season one.
Only Season 1, yes. They let me go.
Uh, for those who don't know, what is a consultant on a TV show?
A consultant in TV means they already had executive producers and couldn't pay me, so they give you a consultant title. Maybe that's too inside baseball, but there were already executive producers making the show, and I came in late, so they gave me a consulting credit, which looks like I'm just a consultant, but actually I was like an executive producer.
Hmm.
But they had already given those fancy titles away to more important people. They called me when they were running into problems, and I came and helped and fixed it.
So you know Gary, the show's
Yes,
creator. He is the guy who came up with the idea and pitched it to Animal Planet, right?
yes.
Were you there when he pitched it?
I was not there, but I knew about the show. I knew Gary from a show called Laguna Beach that then went on to become The Hills. I'm sure you've heard of those people. But he's always been interested in horror and that genre, and he had this crazy idea that I think I said to him, uh, good luck, it's never going to work, which I say quite a bit, and then they become big famous shows. Um, I had heard him talking about it, and I just thought it was the craziest idea.
I also seen on your IMDb both of yours that you both worked on the show Punked with Ashton Kutcher.
Yes, that's how I met Gary.
That's where you met Gary.
Yes,
And from then on, you guys have known each other since.
yes.
So, from the moment that he calls you saying, I just got this idea for Lost Tapes, what do you think?
When I heard him mention Lost Tapes, I thought it's never going to work. It's too crazy. I remember him talking budget wise, and it was very low budget, as you can probably tell from watching the show. It
Yep.
looks like they didn't spend a lot of money, and I just didn't know that Animal Planet didn't seem like the right place for it. Like it just seemed like a show that nobody wanted. And then, of course, I was wrong. Everyone seemed to want it. Here I am talking about it 15
And it
years
got three
later.
seasons
3 seasons, yeah.
32, 34 episodes.
Yep.
Now, when you thought it wouldn't work, what made you want to work on it if you thought it wouldn't work?
I was really intrigued by the experimentalness of it, if that's such a word. I think it was so unique, and there's nothing like it on TV. We had all seen found footage horror movies,
We have.
and and I thought, well, why wasn't this something on television? And when I became interested, when Animal Planet became interested, and I thought, okay, this is if they're buying this crazy idea, then maybe I should.
I am personally think it's a unique and bold idea because here you have the show never out outrightly said that to believe in the existence of these creatures. It just said the stories are made up from the possibility of them, and you guys just create stories from that.
Right.
And you take research and quote unquote facts about the creatures, and then around that, you make a whole episode, and that's how you structure the story of each episode.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was. I guess Gary's kind of a genius in that he knows that people like you are out there looking for something that in this world, and people are interested in these kinds of animals, these kind of cryptozoological types, and I just came along for the ride. I wish I could take credit for it. I was just there helping him right the ship. It was a difficult show to make, as you could probably imagine. Very low budget and not a lot of time. And Animal Planet makes shows about cute and furry bunnies that
Mm-hmm.
live on a farm, and then next thing you know, we've got Bigfoot and a Chupacabra. They
Yep.
don't know how to deal with this. So it was. I was there during the most difficult part, which is also something that I seem to be very good at. Sort of getting a network that doesn't make genre, doesn't make horror, doesn't make scripted, doesn't make anything like this understand that there's an interest in this. So
it's almost as if
that was part of the consulting.
it's almost as if you combined the concepts of a Twilight Zone with a nature documentary and put it into one.
Yeah, the idea was sort of start more nature documentary, start more informational, and slowly become just a horror movie by the end. I mean, that was the idea. I'm not sure if that was translated in the final product, but like it was supposed to be okay. Get used to this information. This is what a chupacabra looks like. This is what they do. And then as you get invested in the monster, then you become more a straightforward narrative. There are these characters. They're running away. There's scares. It was an interesting. I just remember discussions about, they called it like an inverted triangle. They said there's a lot of information at the top, and then as it gets further and further down, it's less and less information and more scares and horror and narrative. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
Me and a friend started talking about old Animal Planet shows, and we brought up Lost Tapes. And that's when I thought, I never seen any insider information online. Like, there's no interviews, there's no writers coming out. Like, there's really nothing. The only thing I could have found when you take into insider information was your Reddit comment, actually.
Yeah, it's funny. I work more in comedy, and so people look at my credits and they go, "What's Lost Tapes?" And I say, "Don't worry about it. You've never seen it." But every now and then, someone like you looks at my credits and says, "Lost Tapes, I love that show," and it's really satisfying because it was as someone who worked there, it was a lot of work. It was very hard, and it's nice as someone who works on stuff to hear people excited and enjoy the fruits of your labor. But it wasn't like a hit show. It was, to be perfectly frank, Animal Planet hated it.
Yeah,
And it was just like an interesting, and I can go deeper into it. I don't care about Animal Planet, but the show, when it aired, the first season, it was doing very well with young men like yourself.
Right.
It was boys between 13 to 25 love the show,
I found
which is what you
12.
want when you make TV.
Yeah.
That's the sweetest demo. And I said, well, that's great. And they said, yeah, but our advertising is already sold to women because we skew women or female. And I just remember thinking, well, why don't you just change the ads to reflect the audience? And they're like, we can't do that. They're pre-sold months ahead. And that's when I realized how slow TV is, and how if the show came out now and it was on Netflix or Prime or Hulu, I think it would be a huge hit. I think that there's an audience for it. I just think Animal Planet was the wrong place for it. If it's airing at 6 a.m, they don't care about it. I mean, I'm never going to work for Animal Planet again, so I don't really care. But it was an interesting time in how cable and broadcast was a certain way, and now we live in this streaming world, and man, TV is really slow and really not able to go, oh, young men enjoy this show, we should maybe try and make money off of young men and switch our advertising. So I remember watching the show, and it would be Lost Tapes, but then there'd be an ad for a feminine product or something like. But young men are, I don't know. It was just that is like a real defining moment in my short, stupid career in realizing that TV doesn't know how to adapt quickly. Where I thought, oh, well, why don't you just change the ads? And they just said, we can't do that. That's just not how it's done. So I don't know if that's too inside baseball or boring, but it was definitely you guys have something there. If Lost Tapes were only on another network, I think we'd be talking about it.
I did notice how you said Animal Planet hated the show. Like, they didn't even
Yes.
believe in it.
Yes.
It felt like that, honestly, because
Yes.
I went to. I don't know if you've been on the Animal Planet's website and went to Lost Tapes.
Nope.
I've noticed for season 1, your season, the listing is all out of whack.
Really?
I wrote them down here and I triple checked them so I know they're right. So the show ended 2010, right?
Yeah.
The first one at the top is episode 13, Mothman,
Right.
and it says it premiered April 8th, 2011.
No.
Right under it, it said it is episode 7, Bigfoot, which aired November 17th, 2009 is what it says.
That's yeah. Well, yes, you can. And the network did not like the show.
Yeah,
I don't know why they bought it, but once they saw it, they did not know. It's not cute and fuzzy little deer running around or a guy helping you with your dog and your dog problems. It was like a pretty intense show.
The second episode has a guy hung from a bear trap because of Bigfoot.
Yes,
It was different at the time.
It was a different time. I keep saying it, but I think today on a Netflix or Prime, I think people would be into the show. I think it was.
With things like Black Mirror, I feel like the show would probably be a hit right now.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back. You can direct them.
Especially right now that people notice people are getting into more experimental stuff. The show ended nearly 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
if this was put on maybe Netflix, the production with if they kept going with found footage and interviews and going into research, it might look a lot more cleansed out, even though you cleansed it out as best as you could, dealing with the budget you had.
It was one of the lowest budget TV shows I have ever worked on. Ever. I mean, it is. You could have Gary that like he can talk if he wants to talk about money, but I just remember not being paid any money, but that's okay. I was experimenting, and I was 10 years younger.
You weren't paid.
I was paid, but I was not paid well. But it was more for okay. This is an experimental show. I was attracted to the idea of what we were trying to do. Really scare people, give them information, make them feel something, as opposed to, hi, I'm Oscar, and I help with dogs, and we're going to help this woman's barking problem, and we'll fix it by the end, and there's happy music. Like, I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to do something. I wanted to scare people, and this was an opportunity to do it, where it was before American Horror Story, and where horror really has taken over television.
Right.
Nobody's doing horror. I mean, if you consider the X-Files horror, but that was even kind of an oddball show. But the budget was so low. I mean, I think, did the show because it costs so little money, and they looked at, we'll have this much show during our day that costs nothing. And I think, to his credit, Gary's kind of smart. He said, I have this crazy show, but let's do it for low money. He's like an independent filmmaker. He's like Blumhouse now, Jason Blum.
Right.
Just make something really cheap, but make it good and do your best, and the audience will find it.
And then I go on to other sources to look at episode listings, like I went to Amazon and IMDb. Some of them are pretty, some episodes are here or there, episode 2, 3rd, 4th, 5th.
I guess I'm young enough and also old enough to have been around in the old TV days, and they just didn't know what to do with the show. They just
didn't really care to try.
It wasn't their brand. It wasn't their demo. I would think you would try and find an audience since you've spent the money. They just wanted it to go away. I don't know why they made 2 more seasons if they didn't like it, but
that's what I thought. If they didn't care, and it clearly shows. Why go for 3 seasons? Why not just end it like by like episode 5 if they didn't care?
I I think it was, again, it was really cheap, and it's, sometimes easier just to keep making a show you don't like than go out and try and make a new show, develop an idea and make a pilot and get people invested. So it might have just been laziness. I mean, I'm not trying to disparage Animal Planet. I'm here talking about an Animal Planet show I worked on
Yeah.
10 years ago. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, they weren't the best partners, I would say. But maybe times have changed. Maybe they should reboot it. Why not?
I would love to see a reboot personally. Like
Yeah.
like I would like personally one of my I have two favorite episodes in the whole show from season 1, which is Bigfoot and Devil Dragon. I love those two episodes. And Monster of Monterey.
The Monster Monterey's on the boat.
Yeah, the lady on
Yeah.
the boat outside of
Yeah. Yeah.
California.
It's been, when people ask me about it, they get very, when you become a huge filmmaker, this will happen to you. You something you did 10 years ago, they'll ask you, oh, and did that woman know that this was on that and that the device was not working? And I just,
Yeah, how do I remember something
um,
from 10 years ago?
yeah, like, yeah, tell me what you were doing 10 years. You were in high school. You were like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Now, with the episode of Bigfoot, it seemed like you guys gave Bigfoot his own personality because the way I saw that I recognized the show structure was it was almost an episodic version of a commentary. When you look at videos of interviews, they ask like, "So why did you do this with that character?" And then they explain why they did it. You guys did it in the show. Like, there comes a part where you insert a fact of when a gorilla in 2007 escaped a zoo and went on a rampage out of love for a zookeeper that visited him, and
Right.
the upcoming scene would be a poacher attacking the main character, Rachel, and then Bigfoot attacks him.
Part of that was the Animal Planet wanting these stories to be grounded in some truth, even though, whether you believe it or not, I don't think there's really a Bigfoot. But if we're going to tell a Bigfoot story, we would have to sit around and imagine, well,
What it
what
would
does a
be
Bigfoot
like.
want? What motivates it? It's not just a monster; it's an animal,
Mm-hmm.
and what other elements in the animal kingdom might it or in humanity might it like try and emulate. And so that was definitely, I remember that one. I remember us trying to give, I mean, sounds pretentious, but give these monsters some motivation, some understanding of why they do what they do, rather than they're just there to scare our hero or heroine and create problems. And I thought that was kind of fun and interesting and different.
I noticed that in the episode Devil Dragon too, of when guy sticks his arm, wiggles it, and he gets bitten by it, and slowly you just watch him just get poisoned and start to die, and then eventually, and this is one of the most haunting things that I've seen in the show, when the actor he screams, "Leave me alone!" As a little 12-year-old, that freaked me out. That scream and hearing the echo in the forest, that freaked me out. It still kind of does today.
And I got to give it to the actors. So the show was written by a bunch of people that I sort of oversaw, and they were outlines. They weren't like outright scripts. There were, we're on the boat. She's talking to camera. She's telling this and that. And then when we went into production, they shot them in like 3 days, which
3
is
days.
unbelievable. When you think about like a big Hollywood movie, they'll shoot 2 characters talking at a coffee shop. That's 3 days of shooting. This was the whole half-hour episode. And the actors, this is another thing that I was kind of interested in, because I'm from the writing world, and you probably watched a lot of TV where you're thinking, this doesn't sound like a real person. This feels like it was written by a bunch of people who think they're really smart and really interesting. And I wanted a show, or I wanted to work on a show where the characters felt real and they felt they would surprise even the filmmakers, their actions, and that's so everything you see in the show is improv. Everything is them. We talk to them about the character. We talk to them about what's going on in the scene, and with very little time, and oftentimes the characters operating the camera,
Right.
which is absurd. They would create a show. They would create drama, and then the really hard part was in post, because we shot and shot and shot, was finding that particular take, that line that still haunts you to this day. That was the sort of sifting through all of these different takes and angles and building the show in post, which was really difficult and really hard. But it was, I feel like if we had just scripted it all and shot it like a traditional show, it would have been a little flat. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some found footage movies since where it's too perfect the way they're speaking. I say a line, you say a line. There was something about that improvisation that made it feel real. We didn't invent that. There's great filmmakers in history that have just had whole scenes improvised. The "Do you think I'm funny" scene from Goodfellas with Joe Pesci, that's improvised. They didn't know what was going to happen, and it's like one of the most famous scenes in movies. So we like really tried to, and those actors, God love them, like they really gave it their all, and some of them were better than others. And 3 days to shoot a whole show, and you don't get a rehearsal, you don't get like a lot of takes. Like they really helped a lot. And also the editors, like the people that then sifted through all that footage, like making a documentary, and found the right moments and the right takes. Yeah, you know what? I should call Animal Planet and ask for some more money. I feel like they didn't pay me enough. That was a lot of work. I guess it shows because we're sitting here talking about it. Like we really, and I have very little to do with it. I'm not trying to say it was me. It was Gary, and it was a whole team of really talented people. But people really worked hard under unbelievable circumstances. No money, no time, and a network that said, no, this isn't for us. And, kind of made it a pretty cool show.
Yeah, like it felt like this was almost lightning in a bottle sometimes. Like you have, like, just think about the idea of like people, they hold a camera and there's a creature following them. It's pretty out there.
Yeah,
And then you have some episodes that didn't really work as well as others.
I'm well aware. I'm pretty honest about stuff I've worked on. There were a couple that weren't great, but that's like the economics of it. They needed X amount of episodes in this much time for this much money. Sometimes you run out of time and you run out of energy, and you get some not so good ones. But in general, there's definitely episodes that I still kind of think about. I mean, I try not to. When you become a big director, you'll not want to look at your stuff once you've worked on it, especially when you work this hard. But I do enjoy every couple of years someone coming up to me and saying, "Wait, you worked on Lost Tapes?" And then they have all these questions, and it's sort of like, I know a magic trick, and they're like, "How did you do this? And how did you do that?" And I'm like, yeah, it was, just right place, right time, and a lot of hard work.
In season two, have you seen any episodes?
I don't think so.
In
Maybe.
in season two, the episode Jersey Devil, which is one as a little kid I was psyched about.
I think we wrote that one the first season, and we just ran out of time, or it was too expensive. I remember reading it. I think I can't remember, but I didn't. That's a good question for Gary, and he would know like the ins and outs of that.
Yeah.
But I remember that one because I felt like I worked on it just in the creative end, but not the production.
It looks like they actually made a animatronic of the Jersey Devil. Like, there's even a shot where you see the face and it roars.
You
And
know what?
then
I have seen that. Yeah.
and then right after that, a pregnant lady fights off the Jersey Devil with a 2x4. and drives them out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes the show, sometimes it didn't work, but when it worked, I think it really worked. Like, do you remember the episode Hellhound with the gothic teens in the graveyard? And there's a dog coming out.
Yes, yes, yes.
That one I felt was one of the more weaker episodes because that one felt a little less effort. I think I understand that because it was the last episode of the season. Like right after that, you wrap up and then you just go on to the next season. You take a break.
I'm trying to recall any insider tidbits about it. I remember working on that one a lot in post and not really liking it, and I think it was we had run out of energy. As I like to say to people, especially now that I've done stuff for Netflix and the streaming services, where it's not about each week you have a show, you just dump them all. There were a couple episodes that we probably should have just not done. Like we should have said, and that goes right back to the economics of TV. They order a certain number of shows, and you have to deliver them. And it was, I think that one was where I suggested we should just not do this one. We should kill it, and the show will be better, and people will enjoy it more. And the Animal Planets of the world said, "No, we're
We
taking
want
it."
this.
So that's TV for you. You know, they have things in old school TV called bottle episodes where they run out of money and they just take two characters and they put them in a room and they talk for the whole show.
So far, we've confirmed that Animal Planet really did not care about the show.
Someone from Animal Planet might say differently, but that was from my perspective, they were not fans.
3 days per shooting for an episode.
Yeah.
No audition. No cold
No.
reads.
Nope.
It does sound like you guys, as writers and producers, you gave it your all when you could. Like, and with the improv, it worked.
Yeah, I think what makes it successful is Gary had a crazy idea. He hired people who wanted to tell these kinds of stories and do this kind of genre show, don't get an opportunity to other than in movies, which don't pay any money. Can't make a lot of money on horror movies. So we wanted to work in television and reach a big audience. And I think everyone just was excited to try something new. When you work in TV, it's very monotonous. It gets to be like working at a factory, making the same refrigerator over and over again. There's not a lot of creativity, which might shock some people, but television can get really boring. And when things like Lost Tapes, when you get a phone call and someone says, "Do you want to make a monster show about a Chupacabra?" You're pretty lucky, even if you're not paid like you're working on Dancing with the Stars. Or no one says, "When I was 12, your show scared me so much." I think people knew that the show was going to resonate with an audience, and that's kind of why people get into television and film. You make money and it's a job, but you kind of want to meet people who say, "Oh, I love your movie." I met one of the Peter Farrelly, the guy that does the Farrelly brother movies, the other day, and I did something about Mary and all those movies, and it was just fun to tell him how funny his movies are and how much they make me laugh. And that's sort of like everyone who does what we do wants to connect with someone and make them feel something. And this Lost Tapes afforded us that opportunity with lots of obstacles.
You mentioned Chupacabra just now, which is where
Yes.
I want to transition into commentating the episode.
I've not seen it since.
You have not seen it since.
No.
Thoughts before the episode starts?
This is the first time I've seen it since I was sitting in an edit bay in whatever year this came out. I don't remember. I remember liking this episode a lot. I don't know why, but I guess I'll find out. And I remember I didn't write this one, but I oversaw it post-production, so I probably picked a lot of these shots. And that's about it.
One of my favorite intros ever here.
Yeah, that was a lot of stock footage. And I think one of those voices was a writer. I think we faked some of that. I can't remember.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's the narrator here in every episode?
That's a professional voiceover guy, I think that Animal Planet wanted us to use. I can't remember his name.
Do you believe? Lost Tapes. Chupacabra.
So you didn't work on this episode.
Oh, no, I did. I remember I was in charge of the post-production of it.
You remember any of these actors?
Yeah, I think we shot this in Venice, California. I'm trying to remember his name. This is all improv. I thought they were really good actors.
These are their tapes.
The signature opening. These are her tapes, their tapes.
Yes. The long ago, people recorded video onto tapes, which now I think no one would understand. It would have to be lost P2 cards.
Is there any reason why they started with this creature specifically?
I think they started with this creature because it's sort of like the closest to something that is believable, and it's also like a huge part of there's a lore around it, and there was all this great news footage, and of course this footage that we use endlessly of what I think is a coyote.
Right.
I've seen a lot of mangy coyotes in my day, and I thought it was a really interesting story to tell.
So we can already say here, you don't believe in the Chupacabra?
What I believe in isn't important. I think it's what the audience wants to believe, but we don't have footage of it, so we had to use something in its stead. But I'm open to
debate,
to believing whatever.
How do we feel after watching this after so many years?
It's making me feel like a little nostalgic. I remember being really frustrated and trying to get out all this information at the top and wanted to be in the sort of drama of what's happening, but it's sort of making me nostalgic a little bit. I just can't believe this was on Animal Planet.
So where was this shot at right here, where there's supposedly in the Sonoran Desert?
Yeah, I believe that it is Angeles National Forest or Griffith Park. I'm trying to remember. It was shot really quickly, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And we were based out of Los Angeles, and we didn't want to travel too far. Oh yeah, here it comes.
What was that?
That was a great sound effect.
That's one thing I noticed. You guys loved sound effects in the show.
Yes, maybe a little too much. Yeah, that's a real quick, easy way to let the audience know there's some danger for your characters without having to film anything.
Did you tell the actors, like, just look over there, or did you play a sound for them to look at?
No, we just said, react, there's something off camera, and, we put it in later in post-production, but they were actually really good actors. I remember these, and they knew what we needed and how to sort of sell it in the moment. There's that There's that coyote again.
Yep.
You're going to see that a lot.
One thing I like to ask a lot with found footage is why are they holding the camera? Like, that's the number one question for me with found footage.
I would always ask that question too, and sometimes I was told a long, lengthy, motivational answer, and sometimes I was told, well, there's no show if they don't carry the camera. And I remember actors asking, wouldn't I put the camera down? And, you try and be helpful to an actor and say, well, look, I think you're so scared, you wouldn't put it down. You don't, it's like you hold that camera because that's the safest thing in your world right now. And then there are times when you basically say, I need a shot and you need to hold the camera.
Me, I made up my own reason of it's the little girl's gift from her grandma.
Yeah, that's good. I should have used that.
I noticed you guys put like a bird sound effect here, right
Yep.
there. And as a little boy, I noticed, I'm like, wait, was that the Thunderbird? And here you just told him to like, just run and scream.
Run and scream. That's the greatest special effect. Oh yeah, I remember putting that little graphic over there to make it look like a surveillance. What, it was like a drone? No, it was a thermographic camera. Yes.
What did you guys use to shoot it?
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
What they discovered upon investigation was anything but routine.
That's a GoPro on the back of a picture.
I see the date says July 7th, 2006. Was that when this was shot?
I have to check. I don't think so. I think it was somebody's birthday in the office, so we just made it July 7th. I don't think there's any symbolic, meaning to that date.
Sometimes you just insert numbers that... What,
yeah, you hope that someone, I love that.
What about that right there, the infrared?
Yeah, that looked great. Yeah, I just imagine watching, like a dog training show, and then it ends, and then this madness comes on. Like, what were people thinking?
What are you thinking right now, looking back? Like, what would you tell yourself if you went back in time to when you were working on this episode? What would you tell yourself?
I really resisted all of the text and all of the, like I said before, this inverted pyramid where it's going to be sort of a documentary at the top and then becomes more and more of a narrative. And I thought, no, just make it a narrative. It's not that important. But kind of looking back, I think I was wrong. I think it made it, the network wanted to make it seem more like a documentary, and I wanted to make it seem more like a horror movie. And I think the blend is what makes it kind of work. Like what you said earlier, you're giving the monsters some sort of motivation.
The evidence here pointed to something far more mysterious.
Oh God.
What did you guys use here for the 3 marks?
That was just practical makeup. That was, God, what do they call that stuff? I can't remember.
I know there was some CG in the show, but were most of the effects practical?
Yes, mostly practical. The CG we used, it was very sparing. It was pretty expensive back then, and like I said, this show was ridiculously cheap.
I remember in the Alien episode in I think season 2 or 3, no 2, and when the alien pops up on screen, sometimes it's just a big CGI like wasp.
Yeah.
You remember these two actors, the two Border Patrol agents?
Yeah, I don't want to disparage anybody, but I remember them having a hard time, and I remember this scene was really hard to cut around some of their. Instead of emoting and being in the moment, they just. It's like a sort of untrained actor's technique. You just talk and talk and talk and talk, and I didn't direct these. A friend of mine directed this episode. I would have told them to say less and let the sort of like the moment lead the audience, and they just talked and talked and talked. So that was a difficult scene to kind of cut around them explaining what was happening, like we weren't seeing it on camera. A lot of stock footage. Now that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I noticed now that you say it that he is talking a lot, explaining
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. It was a lot of just gag and if you smelled something, you wouldn't say, "Oh, it smells awful." You would. Yeah. There was. Improv is really hard.
Now, I remember from theater class in high school. And I like that it's cutting between this calm moment, him with the little girl, and then him running.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember that. It's a good jump scare. Well, and another thing that I remember is we had to build to these scare moments that would lead you into a commercial, which and then you come back and you have to sort of remind the audience of what you just saw. And it kind of breaks, when you're watching a show and you're scared by what you're seeing, and then you cut to a car commercial. It releases the tension, and that's sort of why I think when you reboot this show, doing it for a Netflix or a Prime or Disney Plus or Hulu, the commercials are what kind of took me out of it, and building to these big scares, then it would slam to the title, Lost Tapes. I think it would have been a lot better if it was streaming show. Oh my God.
I would love to see this show on Disney Plus.
Well, or maybe not Disney Plus. That's part of what my argument in the beginning was. It's hard to scare people on television because you cut to a commercial and then you've released all the tension of the scene, and then you have to remind the audience when they come back, and it's repetitive. It works fine for, I don't know why I'm picking on Dancing with the Stars, but a show like that, sure, you want to know who wins. You have to sit through commercials. If this were seeing it now without any commercials, it's really, I think that was the strange thing for me, is when you watch the show in post-production, obviously you don't watch the commercials. And then I saw it on television and it lost something. No pun intended.
Unidentifiable punter. To this day, agents Valentine and Santino refuse to discuss the incident.
They just won't discuss it.
They won't discuss it. Well, I think we probably shot a scene and then we went, it's better
left out.
if we don't.
I remember this is like the only episode that doesn't have the signature line at the end of "Do they live among us?"
Yes.
This is the only episode that doesn't have it. There we go.
Wow. That took me back.
Did it?
Yeah, it's not the greatest show ever made, but there's something there. There's something like oddly interesting about it.
How does it feel now?
I remember being ridiculously frustrated when we were. I remember being really excited when we were shooting it because it's exciting and you don't know what's happening because you're not. The actors are running around with the cameras, and it seems like this is a great show. And then I remember being really frustrated cutting it because
it just no cut felt good.
Nothing felt right, and I wish like I'm saying now, I wish we'd done it differently. I'd done it better. It taught me a lot about post-production, taught me a lot about how to pick shots. You should have seen an earlier cut of that. It was not good.
Really?
Yeah. it's weird to see it again without commercials, because that's how you watch it when you're working on a show. It dips to black, and that's where the network puts a commercial in. It's so much better. It doesn't. The commercials ruined it, I think, when I watch it on TV.
I pulled these episodes straight off of YouTube, and I look at the comments, and there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, this show scared me as a kid. I loved the show. It was cheap and pretty and cheesy, but it was really cool, and I loved the idea." And it had some followers, like, in it, maybe not at the time, but there's a lot of people coming out now with new age of the internet coming out saying that I want the show to try again.
I think Lost Tapes had the best idea for any of them.
I vividly remember loving this show. Like, it's honestly what kind of got me in the horror genre.
You and me both. Now that I'm talking about it again, I'm like excited to think about it. It was it 10 years ago? I can't even remember. 2009? God, once you get old, it just like years become days. It was such a struggle because there was no Blumhouse yet. There wasn't this like love of this genre. It was a real struggle. But at the same time, I was working with some really good writers, some good producers, good editors who all loved this kind of story. They loved monster movies. We all grew up watching those bad Godzilla movies when we were kids that scared us. And we were kind of like, oh, we're doing the same thing again to a 12-year-old named Xavier, and scaring him. And it was, I don't know, it was just, I think you're right. I think there's a little tiny community that loves this show and would love to see it done a little better. Definitely not with commercials, and, get into that world again. These monsters scare people. And I guess I have to give credit to Gary and give credit to Animal Planet for trying something. Like, we were ahead of our time. We certainly didn't hit a home run, but there's a reason why people are still talking about it. We bought like a sound effect library and bought a cheap one, and so there's a lot of sound effects that are reused or hidden, but they're in the background. We didn't have like a sound design department to go out and make the sounds. We buy one CD for a couple $100 and you own all of the sound effects. And we were kind of like YouTubers, like we were making these super low budget shows with no money and no support. It's kind of like the first Star Wars. Like, I'm not comparing us to Star Wars. We wanted to make the best show we could with the time and the money and the people we had. And, some of them are pretty good. Some of them not so much. But I guess in talking to you about it, it's making me a little proud of working on something that scared somebody. That sort of tickles me. That's fun for me.
Watching it now, more experienced, more grown. What do you rate the first episode of Lost Tapes?
What do I rate it?
From a scale from 1 to 10.
It's a solid 6. It's okay. It's hard because you made it and you see all the mistakes and all of the. Here's the other thing about television. There's always someone who works in an office somewhere at the network that gives you notes to change things, and I see a lot of what they wanted. So the fun of television is arguing with someone who makes shows about cute bunnies, what's scary and what's not. And I see a lot of, we should have pushed back and we should have done things differently. They didn't give us creative freedom. We were partners with them. So we had to do some of their suggestions, and I see them now. And I guess as an older, wiser, grayer TV person, I would have pushed back. I would have said, no, we know what we're doing. You make shows about bunny rabbits. Let us make this show. I guess to anyone who's getting involved in a creative endeavor, there's always going to be people giving you advice on how to change this documentary this way or make this different. There's something to you, the creator, and being sort of honest to your vision. And that's what I would have done a little differently. I'm like a little honored that someone would want to talk about this show so many years later. And I guess it's validating that maybe we were onto something. Like I said earlier, TV can be kind of like working at a factory, and you just make a refrigerator and you make the same refrigerator, and no one's making a documentary about refrigerators. Nobody cares. And it was a really tough time, and it was really stressful, but I'm kind of glad I did it, because now maybe you'll make the next Lost Tapes. Maybe you'll be the next great, horror director, and you can say, yeah, when I was 12, I watched the Chupacabra episode, and I'm never going to use that bird sound effect because it was so bad, it took me out of it. Like, in a weird way, I'm happy that I inspired somebody to do something. I mean, you're a filmmaker, I assume, and you want to do stuff like this. Like, that's, look, if I can do it, you could do it.
Again, thank you so much for this, and I will talk to you later.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Gary Auerbach, executive producer and creator of Lost Tapes.